Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking into the world of education in Panama.
That's right. We're focusing on how schools are organized, the role of counselor teachers, and this big issue of classroom sizes.
And we're basing this on some specific documents, right? Excerpts from one called Organización Escolar, Consejería y Aulas en Panama.
Yep, and also a key document from Meduca, which is Panama's Ministry of Education.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to kind of get under the hood, understand the rules versus the reality for student support in classrooms there.
Exactly. And what all this tells us about, the push for quality education in Panama.
All right, let's jump in. The counselor-teacher role, Decree 100 from 1957. That sounds foundational.
It really is. The sources say this role is about orienting, representing, and guiding students. It's much bigger than just being an advisor.
So not just academics.
Not at all. It paints them as, like, a key ally for the student's overall growth, holistically. And it's interesting, that a 57 decree is still the legal bedrock for this.
Yeah, that's quite something. It shows they recognize this need early on.
Definitely a long-standing function in the system.
Which makes sense. Students deal with so much, right? Emotional stuff, family issues, social pressures.
Absolutely. And the sources really stress how vital these counselors could be. They can potentially help prevent dropouts, make the school feel more supportive.
Improve the whole climate, basically.
Right. Better interactions all around.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The sources give examples. What about in San Miguelito?
Yeah, there's a counselor there running weekly sessions, specifically to boost self-esteem for kids dealing with difficult family situations.
Wow, that's very direct support.
It addresses that emotional core that really impacts learning.
And in Cologne, something about mediation.
That's a great example. A student was struggling financially at home, affecting their schoolwork. The math teacher didn't realize.
Assume something else.
Probably. So the counselor stepped in, explained the situation, and helped get the student extra academic support. Shows that link between home life and school performance.
Definitely. And it's not just city issues. Veraguas.
This one's quite powerful. A counselor noticed a student's grades dropping, so she actually visited the student's home.
Really? Went to the house?
Yes. Found out the student had major family duties, caring for siblings. The counselor then worked with the mother to figure things out.
That's incredible dedication. Really going the extra mile.
She has a real community focus.
And then a different kind of challenge in the Ngebe-Bugle region.
Yeah, adapting to economic realities. The counselor there adjusted a student's schedule because the student had to work.
So flexibility is key.
It really highlights that sometimes education needs to bend a bit to fit the student's life, especially in, tougher economic areas.
Back to the city, Instituto Fermín Nodo, what's the approach there?
Teamwork. The counselor holds monthly meetings, gets teachers together.
Ah, collaboration.
Exactly. To talk about students, identify issues together, academic or behavioral. It's not just the counselor working solo.
That sounds really effective. And one more, Santiago. Looking ahead.
Yes. This one's about future planning. The counselor used vocational tests. Guidance.
Helping with career paths.
Precisely. Identified a student with strong manual skills and pointed them towards technical training, specifically at INADH. So it's problem solving and future building.
These examples really paint a picture, such a vital role.
Hugely diverse and important work.
Okay, so we see the potential of this individual support from counselors, but
Yeah.
the environment matters too, right? Class sizes.
Oh, absolutely. That's the other big piece. And the Meduca document has official guidelines.
What are they aiming for?
For middle and high school levels, pre-media and media academica, the ideal is set between 30 minimum and 40 maximum students per class.
30 to 40. Okay, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
But the organization Escolar source suggests the reality is different.
Very different. Often, the guidelines are there,
Yeah.
but putting them into practice hits roadblocks.
What kind of roadblocks?
Well, a big one is just not enough school buildings, not enough classrooms. Infrastructure hasn't kept up.
Underfunding, historically, perhaps?
The sources kind of hint at that, yeah. Education infrastructure maybe didn't get the investment other sectors did. So even with policies, the physical space is lacking.
Okay, what else?
You also get student migration. Kids moving from private schools to public ones, maybe family saving money. That puts sudden pressure on public schools.
Right, unpredictable surges.
And just general population growth in many areas. More kids needing school places than the buildings can handle.
So the result is, what do teachers actually face?
The sources are clear. Many teachers end up with classrooms of 50 students, or even more.
50, wow. I can't even imagine the level of exhaustion.
It's immense. And The documents really spell out why sticking to those lower limits, that 30-40 range, is so important. It's not just about elbow room.
No, it affects the teaching, the learning.
Profoundly. Let's break that down.
Okay, why are smaller classes better, according to the sources?
First, individual attention. Simple as that. Teachers can actually get to know students, see who's struggling, who needs a challenge. That's huge for inclusion, for equity.
Makes sense. Hard to do that with 50 kids.
Impossible, almost. Second, the learning atmosphere. Fewer students generally means better focus, more order. It allows for actual participation, discussions.
A healthier environment.
Definitely. And third, teacher well-being. Huge classes lead to stress, burnout. It's hard to maintain quality teaching under that pressure.
Yeah, you'd just be drained.
And finally, it comes back to the students' rights. The sources argue that overcrowded classes kind of undermine the right to a quality education that actually meets their needs.
The organization Escolar source had that example, right? A teacher with 43 students in a small room.
Yeah, a very vivid picture of that teacher. They just can't do dynamic activities easily, can't review work properly, can't manage behavior effectively one-on-one.
So the education becomes less meaningful.
Less effective, less engaging, certainly less individualized.
And the root causes seem to boil down to investment and planning.
Pretty much. A clear need for more investment in building schools, building classrooms, and better long-term planning to anticipate demographic shifts, population growth.
Okay, so Meduca knows this is an issue. What potential fixes do the sources suggest they could try?
They list several strategies. Number one, obviously, prioritize building new classrooms, new schools, especially where population is booming.
Makes sense. Bricks and mortar.
Right. Also, designing a smarter enrollment system, maybe by district or even smaller zones, to spread students out more evenly.
Better distribution.
And encouraging the afternoon shift, the vespertino, using the existing buildings more efficiently throughout the day.
What else?
Updating how they draw the school zone lines based on current population data. Using temporary modular classrooms as a short-term fix in really high-demand spots.
Like emergency classrooms.
Kind of. And maybe, just maybe, exploring some flexible or blended learning models in specific contexts. Though the focus, they imply, should stay on in person.
Okay, so that's tackling the space issue. What about boosting the counselors? We saw how important they are.
Yeah, how to make them even more effective. That's a global challenge, isn't it? Providing that support when resources are tight.
True. So what do the Panamanian sources suggest?
So first, they need real recognition and support from school leaders, both administrative and pedagogical support.
Not just a title, but actual backing.
Exactly. Including dedicated time in their schedule, specific resources for counseling work, not just squeezed in around other duties.
That training.
Crucial. Ongoing specialized training. Things like mental health first aid, career guidance techniques, conflict resolution, emotional support strategies.
Keeping their skills sharp and relevant. Maybe borrowing ideas from countries with strong counseling programs.
That's a good point. The sources emphasize specialized training, maybe things like trauma-informed approaches, early intervention, skills that really meet today's challenges.
What else helps the counselors?
Making time for collaboration, dedicated time for them to connect with teachers, psychologists, social workers, building that support network around the student.
Not just expecting it to happen in the hallway.
Right. Formalizing it a bit. And finally, getting counselors more involved in things like parent meetings, school events, making their role visible and understood by everyone.
It really comes back to the teachers, too, doesn't it? They seem to be juggling so much.
Oh, absolutely. The sources really highlight this. Teachers aren't just teaching subjects. They end up being informal counselors, tutors, managers.
Sometimes even like surrogate parents.
Yeah, providing that emotional stability. A massive load.
And you just can't sustain that, not well anyway, without the right condition.
That's the crux of it. You need manageable class sizes, you need resources, you need support systems. Otherwise, quality education and individual support just aren't feasible.
So it's about needing more schools, more classrooms.
And more committed professionals, yes. But also maybe a shift in how society values the school's role in raising citizens.
Okay, so let's pull this together. There's this tension. Panama has the frameworks, the idea of the counselor teacher, rules on class size.
Yeah, the policies are there, on paper at least.
But the reality, because of infrastructure, funding, population pressures, it often doesn't match up.
Exactly. And we need to remember, this isn't just about logistics or numbers, it's about people. Better counselor support means fewer kids falling through the cracks. Manageable class sizes mean better learning.
It's fundamentally about the student's experience and future.
It really is.
Yeah.
Tackling these issues is essential for their well-being and success.
Which leaves us with a big question for our listeners. Thinking about everything we've discussed today, the challenges, the potential fixes in Panama's system, what single change do you think would make the biggest positive difference?
That's a tough one.
And maybe think about how that idea, that single action, might apply or resonate in education systems elsewhere, maybe even where you are. Definitely some food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.